In the Fallout series of games, we have quite a few DLC or just large-scale expansion-sized mods that are in development and on their way. Just earlier this week, I showed you guys a remake of Fallout 2 that's in the works, and just recently got an exciting and very large update. And consistently on the channel, we talk about things like Fallout Miami, Fallout 4 New Vegas, or even Fallout 4 The Capital Wasteland Project. And yet despite pretty much all of those still being a ways away, with no real release date window in mind, or likely even in the next year, one that I feel like hasn't been getting enough attention recently that is actually pretty close to release is Fallout The Frontier. This is one of those mods that I'm sure many of you are familiar with to some degree. You've probably heard the name over its 6 or so year development, but I'm sure the vast majority of you don't really know where it stands right now, or maybe even kind of forgot about what exactly this is doing. With one of the main reasons being this is a DLC-sized overhaul mod on its way to Fallout New Vegas. And considering many players have moved on to Fallout 4, it's kind of gotten forgotten to some degree, but here I am to remind you about it and explain to you why you should still be excited, as this mod is actually in its final stages of development. Feature-wise, it seems to basically be complete, and right now it's described how over the next few months there's still some voice work and additional polish to be done, but otherwise we may see a release date in not even that long. So what Fallout The Frontier is attempting to do is take you to Portland, Oregon, just north of Nevada, around the same time as the events of Fallout New Vegas. It's during a similar time frame, but distinctively at a different time than the Battle of Hoover Dam. So it's before the Battle of Hoover Dam, aka the ending of New Vegas. But of course, the major twist you do see in many of the videos, screenshots, and just the story overall is this is during a nuclear winter. Due to the rising dust from the nuclear blast, the sun was blocked out and the temperature has dropped significantly in the area. So rather than the traditional desert climate you're used to with Fallout New Vegas, with this mod you're getting a winter climate, and that will actually play a role, but we'll speak more about that in a moment. Although this is a mod for Fallout New Vegas, it's more of a new game experience. It is very large, featuring over 50 quests in between the main quest and some of the side quests, although some of the side quests are fairly short. The NCR and the Legion are two of the major players throughout this story overall. If you choose to side with the NCR, which you'll have to do somewhat while beginning the main quest, you're going to have more of a combat focus, so more of a run and gun playstyle, where conversely, the Legion, which will be a branching off point from the NCR's main quest, will have more of a focus on dialogue and skills. And this is distinctive because there will be a notable point where you'll have to decide to side with the NCR Legion or a third party. That third party is going to be the Crusaders. Gameplay wise, the Crusaders are a mix of the two, not as combat focused or dialogue focused as the Legion or NCR questlines, but rather having a bit of both. The Crusaders are a new faction introduced with this mod. The founder was a previous Brotherhood of Steel paladin who retired, took a simpler life, but then had their home destroyed. Following that, they were invigorated and decided that it was their role to use the advanced technologies of the Wastes to recapture some of the local Holy Lands, and this definitely has very strong religious undertones. It's a major motivation for them. And they hope to use technology to actually capture land and establish Mormon cities, very similar to the city that was destroyed originally. So with this mod, you're going to have those three major pillars, three major options of quest lines you can complete. And something pretty interesting about this, we honestly don't know much about the story. We could see tidbits here and there and just how much custom content was introduced for some of these factions. They'll have very unique armors and weapons tuned to the location, but otherwise, large in part, we don't know much about what exactly our main focus or adventure will be and how it'll end. So that is something exciting that we'll get to discover shortly. Although the map itself will play a large role in this, as it has been described that with the Frontier, exploration will be a major part of this. We're going to be in a terrible frozen landscape, and those weathers and the climate will have an impact on us. There's a ton of custom assets when it comes to the weather and visuals overall. You can see a lot of this in some of the screenshots. It's very distinctive from some of the other places Fallout has taken us. But this is not just a visual component, as something else included with this mod is known as the chill factor. Very similar to Frostfall for Skyrim, the cold, the weather will have an impact on your body. And it is described how you can't just mindlessly walk through blizzards without consequence. You will get hypothermia and you'll have to plan or adapt to the weather in some ways, having to rely on heat sources and certain armors or outfits to actually keep yourself warm. And for a general sense of scale with this map, it'll be slightly smaller than Fallout New Vegas is, but make better use of space. There won't be nearly as much in the way of dead areas or just pointless walking from one location to another without much else going on. But speaking of things going on, this mod actually has a lot going on even outside of just the story component. With a lot of these DLC-sized mods, it really is a story-focused, different quests and experiences you can go on, but the Frontier is actually bringing a ton of new custom content also. It's described how over 70 new creatures are getting added with this mod to give the landscape a more dynamic feeling. Depending on the weather type or even the time of day, you will encounter different creatures, so it'll be a constantly changing experience and very different challenge-wise. Some of these being described as more cute and cuddly, other ones being just horrifying, and things you will definitely want to turn around and run away from. And it doesn't seem like these creatures will just be haphazardly added in, as many also seem to have their own custom animations. So they will feel truly unique to this landscape. But of course also, much of which you could see in the background, there's also going to be a wide variety in the way of new weapons and armors, many of which are faction specific, actually giving these otherwise familiar factions a unique identity in this different land. They look appropriate for the winter, for the snow, unlike the deserts of the Mojave. Several of the weapons actually look pretty cool and interesting. All in all, it's described how there are hundreds of armors added in and a couple dozen new weapon options. So this certainly should be a sizable armor and weapon mod alone. You'll constantly be seeing new and interesting assets, not just the same service rifle over and over again. Although one of the particularly cool things that is coming with this mod that is also going to make it very, very unique are vehicles. Vehicles in Fallout games have really been hit or miss. I would argue one of the best vehicle mods actually is for Fallout New Vegas anyway, but it seems like this team has put in a considerable amount of time and effort to make vehicles be non-jank, to actually be a viable aspect in gameplay and not something that just stands out as being kind of weird or you could clearly tell it didn't belong here to begin with. They describe multiple revisions and iterations on this system, and it seems like now it's going to be fairly fleshed out. There's a wide variety of vehicles you can get. Some even described how if you side with the NCR, you will have access to a tank. And this is like a fully fledged working tank. You could drive it, shoot the weapon, it has its own custom HUD. You will have to put fuel into the tank when you initially get into it, and although of course this can be quite powerful, some of these vehicles can be quite destructible. So you do have to take care to not have your tank destroyed. But also, if you're fighting another tank, you will notice that there is a dynamic destruction system. It won't just immediately explode and that's it, it'll catch on fire and you may find pieces breaking off. For the Legion, you're going to get your own rideable Bighorner, but there's quite a few options even outside of this. Many Mad Max inspired vehicles or even just kind of traditional ones you've seen from Fallout games in the past but couldn't use. Those would be a component of this mod and fully functional and drivable. And not even just drivable, but little things like having their own horns, headlights. You'll be able to customize which weapons some of these vehicles have or even which armor types are equipped to them. It'll have a full-on mod system similar to the weapons in New Vegas. And you could either find these just scattered throughout the region or alternatively actually purchase them from the local vehicle dealer. Although of course the purchase route may be a bit more expensive. And there's even some special vehicles hidden throughout the area, so if you do a little bit of that extra searching, you might walk away with something a bit better. But even to build off of this, there's actually also going to be Vertibird flight and combat. You'll finally be able to experience flight in your own Vertibird. And although this also is something I am wary of, the gameplay we've seen in these areas thus far doesn't look horrible, and actually looks like quite a bit of fun. And considering several of these videos are quite old and these systems have been described as getting additional polish, they'll likely only look better on release. And one of the other cool things that I couldn't find gameplay of, but that has been described, is how there'll actually be segments of this mod where you are entered into space, so you'll be on a spaceship and have combat or other interactions in a low gravity atmosphere. Which just sounds awesome if done correctly. Also could be a pretty interesting insight as to what we're going to get with Starfield. That's a decent look at what's coming with the Frontier, but if you're on the fence or wary about this, as many mod projects do have their issues, one thing that I will offer to give you a bit more confidence. It seems like for quite a while now they've been putting on the final touches. During a dev update earlier in 2019, which I will have linked down below, they did describe how they really had a strong focus and a big push around performance. And it seems like just overall, they've really been spending a lot of time and effort on an additional level of polish for this mod. Large in part, it seems like a lot of the efforts are in the voice acting category. That's mostly what's going on at this stage. But during that, there's been the opportunity to refine some of the other features, although they are strictly not adding additional ones to not get that feature creep that so many mods do suffer from. Overall, this seems like it's going to be massive, one of the largest mods to ever come out for Fallout in general, and by the looks and sounds of how things are being handled, one of the best out of the bunch. We don't have too many large-scale DLC-sized mods that you can actually play in their completion, and I'm very excited to get to cover this one as we do approach release. If you want to find out more or just stay up to date with the Frontier in general, I will have links to some of their major social media down below. I will have a link to that latest dev update, but specifically on Discord. They tend to post weekly to monthly updates on what's going on, or even recruitment for new members and voice actors. I'll have links to all of their social media in general, but those are the places to keep an eye on, and I'll also have some of the YouTube links for those videos I've been sharing. Or alternatively, you could just subscribe, as now this is securely on my radar, and I definitely have a feeling I'll be talking more and more about this in the coming months. But without further ado, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this one. Hopefully you are excited, but also hopefully you just enjoyed the video. But until next time, as always again, I thank you for watching, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.